All right. Well, welcome to day three of HR and Future of Work 2021. I hope you're enjoying the sessions and gaining a lot of insight from the content and speakers that we've put together for you. My name is David Rice. I am the editor of the HR Exchange Network and your host. We've got another great day lined up for you that we can't wait to present. But first, I do have to go through a few reminders as usual. Number one, if you should have any technical issues, feel free to ask any questions technical related. Just put it in the help tab underneath the chat function. And then put any questions that you have for our speakers. And we encourage you to ask those throughout the session. But put any questions that you have for the speaker under the chat tab in the chat function. Second thing, be on the lookout for downloads from all of our speakers and sponsors. Those will be found underneath the attachments on your page. If you just scroll down a little bit, there's always a lot of good content in there. It's always worth exploring. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. And finally, of course, you can earn SHRM credits for all of these sessions that you attend live. Details on how to redeem those will go out after the event concludes today. So be on the lookout for that. All right, with all that said, our first session of the day is titled The Future of Work is Distributed, How to Shift Employee Rewards to Fit a Distributed Employee Model. To lead us in this discussion, we are joined by Rebecca Hathaway. She is the Director of Employee Experience at Tango Card. So welcome, Rebecca. I'm going to get out of your way now. Take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Like I said, like David said, we're going to talk about the future of work and what that distribution looks like for a lot of folks. We're going to keep this a little less slide heavy than some previous presentations. We're just going to try and keep it very conversational and very again, just very light to talk about this topic. There's a lot to talk about, so we're just going to touch on some basics here. And then I have my marketing manager, Aisha, with me today. She's going to be helping me out in the chat and everything. So, and last but not least, we do have a gift that we will be sending out for a raffle. So we encourage participation in chats. But if you are here, we'll be sending that. We'll be contacting the winner for that tomorrow. So let's get going. The future of work is distributed. How do we shift and how do we think about employee rewards when you move from one model to another? So obviously COVID sent most people that could be remote. It had a huge impact on the landscape of work, and it's going to have continued ripple effects for probably the foreseeable future. And I know a lot of people made some different shifts. Some were temporary, some were permanent. Some pulled some very aggressive loops early. But if you're still thinking about, what that can look like for you, you're still not sure what it looks like in a post-COVID world. We're going to talk about a little bit of what the things you should be considering are and what we've done at Tango Card as an option for our employees. So when we're initially thinking about what you want to do if you want to move to a distributed workforce, the first thing to think about is what type of work you actually do. There are some spaces where a distributed workforce is a challenge, and it's okay to say that doesn't work for us, that doesn't work for what we do, and it doesn't work for our employees. I would challenge you, though, to really think about what that means, because if your employees are effectively at home right now doing their roles and not really having any issues that aren't COVID related, of course, maybe it's okay to have that approach. I think in a pre-pandemic space, there was a lot of opportunities for this where people were hesitant. They didn't know. There was a fear of, what does our organization do and how can we possibly do that from home? And COVID has shown us that most of us can do our jobs effectively from home, or at least the majority of the time, maybe not always, but often. And so as we look at that, really consider what that means for you and your company. Because again, I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, we're not really effective right now. And COVID has been a very interesting test, because the other piece of it is that we're not in a normal space, right? Maybe your work is affected, but you're feeling lonely, you're feeling isolated, and that's okay. And you need other outlets for that. But if we weren't in a COVID space, could you effectively do your job from home and find that outlet elsewhere? So, thinking about the types of work that you do, and if you can be effective in distributed ways, what does that look like? And, moving on from that, let's say you do think that, yes, we can be distributed, we can do this, this is working for us. The next step is to think about what that really means from a location standpoint. Um, if you're based in a city, are you going to stay in that city and have individuals remote, but only from that place? Are you going to expand to new states? Are you going to allow employees to move? How are you going to pay them if you do allow them to move? Is it going to be based on their labor market? Are you going to have a flat salary structure? Is it going to be regional? There's a lot to think about, and we're not going to go into every single detail here because we'd be here for like multiple hours. But it's a really interesting topic. And again, I would encourage you to just start thinking about these things as you're looking at your return to work plans. Um, and then there's the actual global piece. Are you okay saying, okay, you can move anywhere in the world? Do you have payroll capacity for that? What is your limitation? And what are the guidelines? At Tango Card, for example, we've said that you can move just about anywhere in the United States. It does require approval from the chief financial officer and from myself to ensure that we can effectively register in that state and that we as a business are okay to be there and that our benefits are going to still be sufficient there. But we have decided that global is not an option for us. We're a small, medium business. It's just a little bit too hard for us right now. Now that might change. And just as a reference point, we've also elected to say that if you do choose to move, your compensation is based on the labor market to which you move. So there is adjustments to be made there to make people really consider, is that something that you want to do? We're also based in Seattle. It's a very high cost of living area. And, when we've always had all their offices, and that's another thing to consider. Do you have more than one space? We have 3 offices, and we've always adjusted those offices for comp based on their location. So when we moved to allow people to be remote, one of the things we considered was, well, we've already been doing this, so this should be best practice for us moving forward. So that is an approach that we've taken. But again, you might say, hey, we actually only want to be registered for payroll in this one state or this one area. And that's okay as well. And letting your employees know that and being really transparent and upfront about that is going to really set up a really great foundation if you do consider a remote and like fully distributed workforce. And the last thing to kind of think about is you don't have to make it all or nothing. We've heard employers say we're shutting down all of our offices and everybody's remote from now on, no matter what. That may not work for some of your employees. Some of your employees may want to be in the office. But if you shift the other way and say, as soon as it's safe to do so, everybody's back in the office and there's no more working remote, that's really probably not going to be a great option either, because at some point employees are going to expect a level of flexibility, especially in certain roles. You can't say, oh, I know you just worked from home for however many months they've worked from home, and then say, okay, but you can't effectively do your job from home now, we need you in the office. Employees are not going to respond well to that. And we have found at Tango Card, the more you treat your people like autonomous humans, the better they do. And it can be a really, really great way to keep employee engagement up and keep your employee experience just really solid, because you're allowing them to make the choice that works best for them as an employee as well as a human. And we have elected what's called a choice first plan that we'll talk about in a moment. But I'd love to just raise the question in the chat. What does your return to the office look like? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? Have you even thought about it? I know a lot of companies, we're still thinking about it, but not in a real sense. So what are you guys doing? We'd love to hear. I'll pause for a minute and just see if anything pops up in the chat before we move on. I see that somebody in the chat uses Tango Card. That's fantastic. WGU is actually my alma mater, so go Night Owls. Lonnie from Cross Talent Solutions moved to consulting. So the location is going to be more flexible. That's fantastic. That's a great option if it's something where you're smaller or you're more agile to move to that kind of model. Hybrid model, I see that a couple times in here. And yeah, the hybrid model, I think, is going to be what you're going to see a lot of companies do. I think that's going to be a really, really big piece, is that hybrid model, that flexible work model, whatever you choose to say. Um, Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to what Tango Card's Choice First plan looks like. And that's what we're calling ours, Choice First, because that goes along with our product and what we do. The idea of our product is that you get a gift, and that gift led you the choice of a gift card. So that's speaking to our values and saying, okay, employees have a choice. And so we've allowed, again, employees to choose where works for them in a statewide perspective. And again, they can be most places in the United States. And they can choose if also to be in office. We're keeping our physical spaces. And so we've said that at this point, start thinking about how you want to return to an office or how you want to stay home. Does that work for you? Again, we have 3 offices. We have an office in Boise, Idaho, Seattle, Washington, and in Omaha, Nebraska. So we've got a variety of spaces that people can go into if that's their choice. And as we put this plan together, we really wanted there to be benefits to each one that were unique, that were interesting, and that made sense. So part of being remote, I think a benefit in and of itself is that you can be remote. So looking at it from that perspective and saying, okay, I really like not having a commute. For me, that's a big thing. And being able to walk my dog over lunch, whatever that looks like for you, is a really great opportunity to give employees what they're looking for in that space. Again, we can relocate within the US if you choose to do so, as long as it's approved by your management. Um, and then what we've actually done, and we did this as soon as we sent everybody home, and we realized it was going to be more than like a couple weeks. We sent everybody a $500 reward link, which is our product stipend, to spend on their home office. And that's in addition to providing them basic equipment. Everybody gets a laptop and a monitor, the basic equipment you need to do your job. The $500 stipend is a way for people to upgrade their desk so they don't have to work at their dining room table, or buy a nicer chair. I've had people say they bought coffee makers with it because they always got their coffee in the office and now they needed one at home. Had somebody buy a portable air conditioner. For those of you in Seattle, you know, we don't always have air conditioning in our places, and that's what they needed in the summer to effectively work. So we've seen a ton of really cool things with it. And it's just been a really great way. And we actually are giving this to all of our new employees when they start, to say, you know, thank you for joining us. We know you're home. So here is the stipend. It allows them to see our product, but also to build up a space where they're comfortable working and they feel good about working in. We don't ask people to tell us what they spend their stipend on. I hear, and people will tell us just for fun. But we do, again, say anything that's needed to do your job, we're going to provide for you. But anything that makes your job more comfortable, makes it easier for you to work at home, that's what that stipend is for. And then we are also moving to a monthly tech stipend as well. This was an interesting choice because we are just now starting this. A lot of this we've been doing up until this point. But a lot of people, almost everybody has home internet. It's pretty standard, just like a cell phone. But we want to make sure that people are able to effectively work. And that might mean upgrading your bandwidth. That might mean upgrading your speed. Maybe you need to just increase your cell phone plan because you're on that more. Whatever that looks like, we're going to do a monthly stipend for that moving forward during the pandemic for everybody. And then in the remote office space, once we do return, you would continue to get that if you're a remote employee. And that is something that, again, we've just now started looking into, and to provide that space for our employees to say, okay, I am using more of my home resources. How can I offset that cost a little bit without, the company fully subsidizing, your 4K Netflix, right? There's a balance there to be had. And then for our in-office employees, we always want to be cautious that safety is our biggest priority. We have revamped our spaces so that when people do return, they're a little bit, we have an open office. The desks are a little more spread out now, so you're not sitting right next to your coworker. We've just kind of upgraded our spaces. All of our desks are the electronic sit stands to make it a more comfortable place to work. Everybody that chooses to be in the office will get a dedicated desk and will have a choice of where that desk sits. The idea here also is that employees can go back and forth between these two options. They just have a primary. So if you're a remote employee, but you want to come to the office, you have that ability, and there's hot desks or hotel desks. I know those are used interchangeably, but you have desks that you can go sit at for the day, see the office, experience the space, but not have to be there. We also offer on-site snacks and beverages. We've always done that, and we'll continue to do that once we're back in the office. And that's part of the perk is, you get your Starbucks coffee every day, and you get your variety of office snacks, just as a fun way to have that space there. And then for our in-office employees, pre-pandemic, we did cover a stipend for parking passes or transit, however you got to work, to offset that cost. Again, we're in Seattle. Parking is not always cheap or readily available. So we wanted to make employees make sure that they had a reference for that. And also, again, transit. So you can get one or the other. And the idea there is that each one of these bullet points has a sister bullet point on the other side. So kind of giving equal weight to both and making sure that neither one is necessarily for the company the one that people should be choosing. People should be choosing what works for them. Now, of course, we do have a very small amount of key roles where they do actually need to be in the office to effectively do their role. That is a small subset of employees. And that is just part of their employment contract, is that they're not eligible for this plan in their current role. But they do, of course, get all the other in-office benefits. So there's that piece there. And again, you can go back and forth between the two. The idea here is that you make a primary choice, but that occasionally, you want to go to the office, or in-office employees can still work from home if they need to make sure that people are doing what works for them and what they need, because it changes. And the idea is also that you can change it if you need to. If you are a remote employee and you realize 8 months in, it's actually not working for you, you want to switch to the in-office space, that's okay. We'll make that pivot. We're not going to claw back the $500 stipend, but you might not get a new one if you switch back to remote after that. But allowing for that space to choose and to really make a decision that works best for you and for your family, because at that point you're having to worry less and you can be more present in your role when you have less things to worry about outside of that space. And that's just about the end of my presentation. I wanted to give a lot of time for chat and for discussion because this is such an open-ended topic. So, and I know we have a couple polls that Aisha is going to put up as well. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, if you have questions on how we've approached things, or just anything.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Becky. I appreciate the presentation. That was good stuff. So one of the questions I had just, was kind of around, I'm wondering, in your experience, which benefits incentives have been the easiest to implement and make the biggest impact for the broadest number of employees?
Well, definitely from the remote space, I would say the $500 work from home stipend has been probably the most popular. And it is the easiest to administer. Again, it is, not to be salesy, but it is our own topic, or it is our own product. So it's a very easy thing for me to do. And it's a great welcome gift for employees on their first day. It's a nice way to end their first day and get that in their inbox and be able to get what they need if they've had a chance to think about it.
Now, a lot of choice first plans that allow employees to choose their primary work companies. How can small, mid-sized companies make this model work for them?
Yeah, I think there's a space here that we often don't talk about, which is if you're looking at this opportunity, think about how much you spend on real estate and on resources and just reallocate a little bit of that. Obviously, if you're keeping your workspaces, that's a little more challenging. But for us, we looked at it as an investment in our employees and less about how we can make it work versus, this works for us and this is what our people need. And also, again, those little things begin to add up. Somebody's in the office and they need a mouse pad and they need, we go through a lot of coffee in our Seattle office. Um, I'm sure nobody is surprised. And we noticed that we were saving a lot of money on office snacks. And even when we return, we're not going to have as many people in the office. So we shifted those funds and kind of shifted the thinking to how can we make our workspace better for our employees to keep them more engaged. And that was kind of the reasoning behind it and the thought behind it.
Excellent.
See a couple interesting questions in here as well.
Yeah. So Liz from WGU asked, do you see companies moving towards covering internet costs for remote employees kind of as a standard, as, part of their rewards program or
I do
benefits?
think we're going to see that in some degree. I don't think that we're necessarily going to see companies cover the entire cost of your home internet, right? Your home, if you're home for a long time. But I do see a future where a tech stipend or an internet stipend is there to help subsidize and offset the cost. One of the ways that my CEO looks at it is, you know, when you come to the office, we don't buy your car for you, but we'll offset the cost of parking or transit to help that out, to make that an easier transition. And so he looks at this the same way. We're not going to buy you a router. We're not going to do your full plan, but we're going to offset the cost that we know is having an impact on you in this way. And I do think you're going to see that if people continue to work from home, because not everybody is going to initially select the internet that's going to be, you know, the ideal for working from home for themselves. But if they have a way to offset that cost, that can be part of it.
So, one of the things that's come up in our future of work conversations, and it's a common theme in a lot of our events, is we're in this time where there's so many different generations in the workforce. And so do you see kind of like a difference based on that in terms of like demographically who uses what kind of rewards, that kind of thing?
I haven't seen a huge change in that particularly. I could see where that would happen. I do know that we have a very diverse range of ages in our workforce. And I don't see a big difference on my end as far as that is concerned.
Okay. Lonnie asks, are you putting technology in place that monitors remote activity so you have some sort of validation of work being done?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. So not a technology specifically. And I think that that's an interesting point of conversation, because when you start to do that, employees lose trust because you've lost trust in them. For us in particular, it's really easy to tell when employees aren't doing things because we don't have a lot of folks who aren't busy on a pretty regular basis. Um, I do know that some teams, when they clock in, they do have a ticketing system so you can see, what's being done in that way. um, you know People being online or not, but I would be hesitant to say putting technology in to keep people actively working can be a double-edged sword. I could understand the necessity for it, but I think you would lose a little bit of trust with your employee base if that's necessary, though it may be necessary. We don't have anything specifically on a company-wide level. Again, we have teams that use ticketing systems, so it's very clear when work's getting done. Our engineering team has a very clear output of things getting done. And at the end of the day, a lot of our teams, if they're not working, our clients will let us know that things aren't getting done, because, we have money transactions happening. And so there's a real-time feedback aspect to a lot of what we do.
Okay. Um, yeah, I don't see too many other questions in the chat. Folks, feel free to put these in there, but otherwise, I don't know if you have any kind of other final thoughts on this topic, Becky.
I would say, just as a parting thought, for those of you who are interested in doing this and receive, resistance from leadership or people that make those final choices, and it's something that you do want to explore, really have them think about what it means for employees to be effective. And if you really have to sit and monitor somebody who's sitting in a seat, and that's how you're monitoring their output, are you being an effective manager? I would challenge people to look at it from that perspective, because I think that's a really great opportunity for growth and, just retention and getting new employees. You're not going to get top talent if you don't show that you respect and trust your employees. I think there's a really interesting space here that we're going to be entering, where there's going to be an expectation of this level of flexibility with especially a lot of knowledge workers. They're going to expect this. And if you're not ready to have an open and honest conversation about it, you're going to miss some really great talent out there, because they're going to be looking for those companies that have that.
All right. Yeah, no, I think you're right about a lot of that, and it's interesting kind of how this is impacting the employee experience. There's this whole move towards remote work has just changed. I think about how much my perception of work has changed in the last year, and all our lives are blurring. And so it's important that we kind of, I think in HR, have to rethink kind of how we interact and what we offer. So I'm really glad that you guys were able
Absolutely.
to join us today. All right. So I don't see too many other questions. We have some nice comments, people saying thank you.
Yeah.
So that's always
Thank you
good to
guys
hear.
all for attending. And like I said, I know Aisha's going to be reaching out to our raffle winner tomorrow. And if you have questions for me, you want to connect, my information is here. Um, and you can always reach out to our marketing team as well if you are interested in our product. It's really fun. It's really great. But yeah, it's a really great opportunity to rethink the way we work. And COVID has given us that unique space to have had a long-term experiment on what remote work can look like, for especially for knowledge workers in the future.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, as tragic, of course, as it's been a little bit of a once in a lifetime opportunity in terms of this and rethinking like what work is in this modern era. All right.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Becky. This was fantastic.
All right.
Everyone,
Thank you.
yeah, you can use your agenda
Yeah.
icon to go over to the next session. I will see you over there. At least, okay.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.